I gave my daughter a necklace for Christmas, and 3 days later, I found it in the trash. When she found out it was worth thousands, she rushed to rummage through the trash. I stood nearby and said coldly, "It's too late now." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. Dad, I'm not playing your old-fashioned games. This is 2024, not 1950. Evelyn's voice cut through the living room like a blade, her eyes never leaving her phone screen. I stood frozen by the coffee table, holding the cardboard box labeled Christmas Margaret's in my weathered hands. Inside, vintage ornaments waited in their tissue paper cocoons, each one carrying decades of family memories. The hope I'd carried from the basement felt suddenly foolish. "These aren't games, Evelyn." My voice came out smaller than intended. "These are our family traditions." She finally looked up, her expression sharp with irritation. "Your traditions are boring. Look, this is how normal people celebrate." She thrust her iPhone toward me, swiping through Instagram photos of elaborate Christmas displays. Crystal ornaments, designer trees, perfect lighting setups that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Granville rustled his newspaper from the far end of the couch, a wall of newsprint between him and our conversation. Coward. Ivory pushed his toy cars closer to my feet, sensing the tension crackling through the room like static electricity. I carefully lifted a delicate glass angel from the tissue paper. Margaret had painted the tiny face herself in 1987, the year Evelyn turned 5. "Your mother always—" "Don't you dare mention Mom!" Evelyn's voice exploded through the room. "She died 5 years ago. These dusty old things won't bring her back." The angel trembled in my palm. Ivory looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes, his small face pale in the lamplight. Even Granville's newspaper stopped moving. "She loved these ornaments," I whispered. "Well, she's not here anymore, is she?" Evelyn stood abruptly, her phone clutched like a weapon. "I have to live in the real world, Dad, where appearances matter, where my friends judge our family by what we can afford." The silence stretched between us, heavy as winter air. Granville cleared his throat and folded his paper, avoiding my gaze entirely. "Think I'll check on the car," he mumbled, escaping through the front door. Ivory crept closer to my legs, seeking shelter from the storm brewing above his head. His small fingers brushed against my pant leg, and I wanted to pick him up, shield him from this ugliness between adults. Evelyn gathered her purse and coat with sharp, angry movements. "When you're ready to join the 21st century, let me know." Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor like gunshots. The front door slammed, rattling the windows. I sank into Margaret's old armchair, the Christmas box balanced on my knees. Ivory climbed up beside me, his 10-year-old weight warm against my side. Through the window, I watched Evelyn march down the front walk, her phone already pressed to her ear, probably calling her friend Edith to complain about her unreasonable father. The ornaments lay forgotten in their tissue paper wrapping, 50 years of Christmas memories reduced to dusty old things. Margaret's angel stared up at me with painted eyes that had witnessed every Christmas morning, every family gathering, every moment of joy we'd shared in this house. But those moments felt distant now, like looking at photographs through frosted glass. Something fundamental had shifted in our family constellation, and I didn't know how to navigate back to where we'd been. Ivory's breathing grew steady against my shoulder. Outside, snow began to fall in the yellow circles of streetlight, just like it had the Christmas Margaret died, just like it had every winter since when I sat alone in this chair, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Morning coffee tasted like ashes. I stood at the kitchen counter, my back to the doorway, listening to the old percolator bubble and pop as it had every morning for 30 years. The familiar rhythm usually brought comfort, but today it only emphasized the silence hanging over our house like fog. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Sharp, determined clicks against hardwood that announced Evelyn's approach before she even appeared in the doorway. "Good morning, Dad." Her voice carried forced brightness, the kind people use when they want something. She swept into the kitchen carrying a folded paper and a small calculator, settling at the table with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this scene. I poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, buying time. "Morning." Granville appeared briefly, grabbing his travel mug from the counter. He mumbled something about errands and slipped out the back door before I could respond. The coward couldn't even look me in the eye. Evelyn unfolded her paper with a flourish, spreading it across the scratched wooden surface. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. The paper was covered in neat handwriting and calculator totals, each line item precisely recorded. I set her coffee down and caught sight of the heading. Christmas shopping list, total $800. My stomach dropped. All my friends are having beautiful Christmases. Her voice took on that familiar edge of entitlement. And you're making us look like beggars. I pulled out the opposite chair, my joints protesting the movement. The list swam before my eyes. Professional Christmas tree, $150. Designer ornament sets, $200. Premium gifts for appearances, $300. Expensive hosting food, $150. We have a roof over our heads and food on the table. I kept my voice steady. That's what matters. What matters? She leaned forward, eyes blazing. Dad, you're living in the past. Granville might find better work, but right now, we need your help. I reached for my wallet, the worn leather soft between my fingers. $20 bills lay stacked inside, the remains of last week's pension check. $347. It had to last until the end of the month, cover groceries, utilities, the property taxes I paid for all of us. I'm already helping. The words came out tired, defeated. You live in my house, rent-free. That's not enough anymore. She snatched the calculator, punching numbers with aggressive jabs. The Grahams bought a 12-foot tree this year. Edith posted pictures of their gift pile. It looked like a store display. The percolator gave a final gurgle and fell silent. I counted the bills again, hoping somehow they'd multiplied. They hadn't. Evelyn, I don't have $800 to spend on Christmas decorations. Her face flushed red. You have that savings account. You never touch it. That's for emergencies. This is an emergency. She stood so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. My social reputation is dying, Dad. Every time I go to playgroup with Ivory, the other mothers talk about their elaborate Christmas displays. I see them looking at my cheap decorations, judging our family. I studied her face, searching for traces of the little girl who used to help Margaret bake cookies every December. That child had found magic in simple traditions, in homemade ornaments and hand-wrapped presents. When had dollar signs replaced wonder in her eyes? Your mother managed beautiful Christmases without breaking the bank. Wrong thing to say. Evelyn's expression turned volcanic. Mom had you making decent money at the factory. Times were different. She grabbed the shopping list, crumpling it slightly in her fist. This is what it costs to be normal now. The list fluttered to the floor as she threw it down, landing beside my chair like a discarded dream. Her heels clicked rapidly across the linoleum as she stormed toward the doorway. When you decide to stop being selfish, I'll be waiting. The kitchen fell silent except for the refrigerator's steady hum. I stared at the crumpled paper on the floor, its neat columns now wrinkled beyond recognition. My coffee grew cold in the mug as I sat there, wondering when providing a home became insufficient, when love got measured in price tags instead of presents. The rocking chair creaked under my weight, a gentle rhythm that had soothed Margaret through countless summer evenings. Tonight, bundled in my old coat against the December chill, I needed its comfort more than ever. Snow fell in lazy flakes, catching the yellow glow of street lamps and creating a wonderland that felt hollow without someone to share it. The photo album sat heavy on my lap, its leather cover worn smooth by decades of handling. Through the living room window, I could see the blue flicker of television light where Evelyn watched her evening programs. Upstairs, Ivory's bedroom glowed warm with homework lamplight. Granville's voice drifted from the neighbor's garage, where he'd gone to help with a project, another escape from the tension he refused to address. I opened the album to Christmas 1987. 5-year-old Evelyn stood on a kitchen stool beside Margaret, both of them flour-dusted and grinning as they rolled cookie dough. Evelyn's gap-toothed smile radiated pure joy, her small hands mimicking Margaret's movements with serious concentration. Back then, Christmas magic lived in those simple moments, in the smell of cinnamon and the sound of her laughter echoing through our kitchen. The pages whispered as I turned them. Christmas 1995 showed 13-year-old Evelyn carefully placing Margaret's painted angel atop our tree, her face glowing with reverence for the family tradition. She'd asked that year if she could paint an ornament too, wanted to add her own touch to our collection. Margaret had guided her hands, helping her create a small wooden star that still hung in the box upstairs. the same box Evelyn now called dusty old things. My fingers found the chain around my neck, Margaret's wedding ring sliding against my palm through the coat fabric. She'd worn it for 43 years, through good times and lean ones, never once measuring our worth by what we could afford to display. Christmas 2019 glowed from the next page, our last complete family photo. Margaret sat in this very rocking chair, moved inside for the occasion, surrounded by 3 generations. Ivory, only 5 then, perched on her lap, while Evelyn and Granville flanked the chair. We'd all worn matching red sweaters, Margaret's idea, though Evelyn had complained about looking too coordinated for social media. The opposite page showed Christmas 2020. Margaret's chair sat empty at the dinner table, a space that seemed to swallow all our attempts at normalcy. Evelyn looked strained, Granville uncomfortable, and Ivory confused by the adult's sadness. That was when everything changed, when Christmas became about filling the silence instead of celebrating togetherness. When did my daughter start measuring everything in dollars? Margaret always knew how to balance tradition with Evelyn's modern ideas, finding middle ground between old and new. She would have known what to say this morning, how to reach through Evelyn's materialism and touch the heart underneath. The wind picked up, rattling the bare oak branches above the porch. Christmas lights twinkled on neighboring houses, elaborate displays that probably cost what I made in a month. The Hendersons had installed animated reindeer that moved across their lawn. The Johnsons' house blazed with thousands of LED lights synchronized to music. Even modest Mrs. Patterson had hired professionals to wrap her evergreens in white lights. Maybe I'd been too passive, too understanding. Maybe Evelyn needed to see that traditions weren't about expense, but about connection. Margaret used to say our daughter had a good heart. She just sometimes forgot about it. I closed the album and touched the ring again, feeling its familiar weight against my chest. Somewhere inside, this house lived the little girl who'd helped Margaret bake cookies, who'd treasured hand-painted ornaments, who'd found wonder in simple moments. That child hadn't vanished. She'd just gotten buried under years of comparing herself to others, of measuring success by appearances instead of substance. A plan began forming in my mind, risky but necessary. One grand gesture to remind Evelyn what Christmas really meant, what family truly cost. Margaret would have called it foolish, spending money we couldn't afford. But she also would have understood that sometimes love required extravagance, that some battles were worth fighting regardless of the price. I stood slowly, joints protesting the cold, and looked toward the house where my family slept. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new chances to bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. One way or another, this Christmas would be different. The snow continued falling as I stepped inside, Margaret's ring warm against my heart and determination settling in my bones like winter cold. Dawn crept through the bedroom windows, painting everything in soft gray light. I'd been awake since 4, Margaret's voice echoing in my memory from last night's dreams. Our daughter has a good heart. She just sometimes forgets about it. Maybe she was right. Maybe Evelyn needed reminding of what love looked like when it came without price tags. The hardwood floor creaked as I padded across the room in bare feet. Somewhere below, the house slept peacefully. Evelyn in the guest room, Granville beside her, Ivory in his small bedroom under the eaves. They had no idea what I was contemplating. I knelt by the closet, fingers finding the loose floorboard I discovered 2 years ago during Margaret's memorial cleaning frenzy. The wood lifted easily, revealing the space where pipes should have run, but never did. Hidden beneath an old towel lay my secret, a wooden cigar box that had belonged to my father. 5 years of careful saving, $50 here, $100 there, skipped dinners out, and forgotten small luxuries. Every bill represented a sacrifice Evelyn knew nothing about. The money was meant for emergencies, for the day when the roof leaked, or the furnace died, or my heart gave out and left them with funeral expenses. $3,247. I counted it twice, then a third time, the worn bills soft between my fingers. Most people my age had retirement accounts and investment portfolios. I had cash in a cigar box, hidden like a Depression-era grandfather hoarding nickels. But wasn't losing my daughter an emergency? The photograph sat on my nightstand, Margaret from our 25th anniversary dinner. She wore the modest pearl earrings I'd saved for months to buy, her smile radiant in the restaurant's candlelight. I'd wanted to get her something more elegant, a necklace to match, but the factory wages barely covered the earrings. I wish I could have given you more, I whispered to her image. Maybe this was my chance to do better, to show Evelyn that her old man wasn't just a penny-pinching relic living in the past. Maybe an expensive gift would prove that I understood her world, that I valued her happiness above my own security. My calculator sat in the nightstand drawer, the same one I'd used to balance the household budget for 30 years. The numbers were simple. 3,245 hours minus whatever I spent still left something for true emergencies. If I was careful, if I spent no more than $2,800, I'd have enough left for minor repairs or medical copays. The morning light grew stronger, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the air. Somewhere in the house, pipes gurgled as the ancient heating system stirred to life. Soon the family would wake, and I'd lose this moment of private decision-making. I thought about Evelyn's face when she opened her Instagram, scrolling past her friends' expensive displays. I remembered her voice. All my friends are having beautiful Christmases, and you're making us look like beggars. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too cheap. Margaret always wanted beautiful things, but I couldn't afford them then. Now, with this hidden nest egg, I could finally be generous. I could be the father Evelyn wanted instead of the one who disappointed her, with homemade traditions and secondhand sentiment. The decision settled over me like morning light filling the room. $2,800. Enough for something truly spectacular. Something that would make her friends gasp with envy. Something that would bring my daughter back to me. I replaced the money in its box, wrapped it carefully in the towel, and set it back in its hiding place. The floorboard fit snugly, showing no sign of the treasure beneath. Footsteps creaked in the hallway. Probably Ivory, always the first one up, padding to the bathroom with sleepy determination. I slipped Margaret's ring onto the chain around my neck and buttoned my pajama top over it. In 3 days, I'd make my move. I'd find the perfect gift, something worthy of the sacrifice, something that would prove my love in a language Evelyn finally understood. The bus wheezed to a stop outside Hartwell Jewelers, its air brakes hissing like an old man's sigh. I'd spent 45 minutes on hard plastic seats, clutching my worn leather wallet and rehearsing explanations I hoped I wouldn't need. The other passengers were Christmas shoppers too, but their confident chatter about credit limits and return policies made my cash feel primitive. Downtown Columbus bustled with holiday energy. Hartwell's storefront gleamed beneath tasteful gold lettering, its window displays arranged like museum pieces. Each necklace rested on black velvet, spotlit like crown jewels. The prices weren't visible from the sidewalk, never a good sign. I straightened my 15-year-old suit jacket and pushed through the heavy glass door. Inside, classical music played softly over thick carpet that muffled every sound. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over display cases lined with treasures worth more than my annual pension. Other customers browsed casually, platinum cards peeking from designer wallets like membership badges to a club I'd never join. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm James Hartwell." A distinguished man in his 50s approached with practiced warmth. "How may I help you today?" My tongue felt thick. "I'm looking for something special. For my daughter. Christmas." "Wonderful. What kind of piece were you considering?" "A necklace, maybe? Something elegant." James guided me to a display case where pearls gleamed like captured moonlight. "These are quite popular for gifts, cultured Akoya pearls from Japan, each one perfectly matched." I stared at a strand that seemed to glow with inner light. Small diamonds sparkled between the pearls, like stars scattered across snow. It was exactly what Margaret would have chosen, classic and timeless. "How much?" My voice came out as a croak. "This particular piece is $2,700 plus tax. The craftsmanship is exceptional. Hand-set diamonds, sterling silver clasp with a safety chain." My heart hammered against my ribs, almost everything I'd saved. "Are you sure it's worth that kind of money?" James lifted the necklace carefully, letting it catch the light. "Absolutely, sir. This is a work of art. Your daughter will treasure it forever." I imagined Evelyn wearing it, the pearls luminous against her skin, her friends speechless with envy. "I'll take it." "Excellent choice," James beamed. "Will you be paying with credit card today?" Heat crept up my neck. "Cash." "Of course." He didn't blink, didn't judge. Let me get the paperwork started. 20 minutes later, I sat at his desk, counting out bills like a man buying a used car. Hundreds, 50s, 20s, 5 years of small sacrifices spread across mahogany. James counted discreetly, his fingers swift and professional. $2,847.99, he announced, sliding a receipt across the desk. With tax included. I signed with shaking hands, watching my savings disappear into his cash drawer. But the presentation was magnificent. A silk-lined box that opened like a jewelry store dream, the necklace nestled in midnight blue velvet. A certificate of authenticity went into a separate envelope, official and impressive. "She's very lucky to have such a thoughtful father," James said, placing everything in an elegant shopping bag. Outside, winter air bit through my suit jacket as I waited for the bus. The bag felt precious in my hands, heavier than its contents should have been. Through the jewelry store window, I saw James helping another customer, someone younger with an easy confidence I'd never possessed. But I had something now. Something spectacular. Something that would prove to Evelyn that her father understood the value of beautiful things, that love could be measured in carats and quality settings. The bus arrived with its familiar wheeze. I climbed aboard, cradling the shopping bag like a newborn, already planning the perfect moment for presentation. Christmas evening, after dinner, with the tree lights glowing and the family gathered close. This time, she'd understand. This time, she'd see how much I loved her. The living room sparkled with Christmas magic. Tree lights twinkled among Margaret's old ornaments, the ones I'd finally convinced Evelyn to help me hang 3 days ago. Mildred sat in the corner armchair, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The Grahams occupied the love seat, Edith clutching her wine glass with predatory anticipation for family drama. Gift wrapping littered the coffee table like colorful carnage. Ivory played contentedly with his new remote control car, the sound of tiny wheels buzzing across hardwood. Most presents had been opened already. Sweaters from Mildred, gift cards from the Grahams, practical items that wouldn't break anyone's budget. I'd saved mine for last. The jewelry store bag sat hidden behind my armchair, elegant and substantial. My hands trembled slightly as I retrieved it, feeling every eye in the room shift toward me. Even Granville looked up from his position by the fireplace, newspaper forgotten. "Evelyn, this is for you." My voice caught slightly. "I hope you'll like it." She looked surprised at the formal presentation, the expensive-looking bag that clearly hadn't come from a department store. "Oh, Dad, how lovely. Thank you so much." But her enthusiasm felt rehearsed, the bright tone she used with telemarketers. I settled back in my chair as she opened the bag, lifting out the midnight blue jewelry box with careful hands. The room fell silent, except for Ivory's car humming across the floor. The box opened with a soft click. Edith gasped. Even Mildred leaned forward, her eyebrows raised. The pearls caught the Christmas lights, each one glowing like a tiny moon. The diamonds sparkled between them, sophisticated and undeniably expensive. Evelyn's face went blank for a moment, the only genuine expression I'd seen from her all evening. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and for a heartbeat, I saw my little girl again. She lifted the necklace carefully, letting it drape across her palm. Mildred made a soft sound of approval. Even Hyman Graham set down his drink to get a better look. "Let me help you put it on," I offered, standing. "No, that's okay." Evelyn moved to the mirror above the fireplace, fastening the clasp behind her neck. The pearls transformed her, adding elegance to her simple Christmas sweater. She looked like the daughter I'd always imagined, sophisticated and radiant. "It looks very expensive," Edith gushed, clearly impressed. And that's when everything went wrong. Evelyn turned to face our guests, one hand touching the necklace at her throat. "Dad always knows where to find nice costume jewelry at the supermarket. Isn't it sweet?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Costume jewelry, supermarket. "Oh no, it's just imitation," she continued, her voice carrying that familiar dismissive edge. "But the thought is what matters, right?" Mildred's expression shifted to confusion. She knew quality when she saw it, had worked retail for 40 years. "Evelyn, dear, I think... Really though, Dad, it's lovely, very convincing." Evelyn's smile was bright and false as Christmas morning plastic. "I'll save it for special occasions." She unclasped the necklace and set it carelessly on the coffee table, where it lay like a discarded dream among the wrapping paper. $2,800 worth of genuine pearls and diamonds, dismissed as drugstore trinkets. "Actually, I should probably put it somewhere safe," she added, but made no move to touch it again. The conversation moved on to other topics, but I remained frozen in my armchair, staring at the necklace that represented 5 years of sacrifice. The Grahams exchanged glances. They'd witnessed something uncomfortable, though they couldn't quite identify what. Ivory crawled over and examined the necklace with 10-year-old honesty. "It's really pretty, Grandpa, like princess jewelry." "Thank you, buddy," I managed. Later, as guests gathered their coats and made their leaving noises, I noticed the necklace still on the coffee table. Evelyn chatted with Edith by the door, already having forgotten about her father's gift. I reached toward the pearls, then stopped. Let it lie there. Let her discover its true value some other way, some other time. Maybe then she'd understand what her casual cruelty had cost. The house emptied gradually, leaving only family and the aftermath of Christmas. Granville helped clean up wrapping paper while Evelyn loaded the dishwasher, normal domestic sounds that couldn't mask the silence growing between us. The necklace remained on the coffee table, gleaming under the tree lights like a question mark nobody wanted to answer. The front door clicked shut behind the Grahams, their footsteps fading down the walk. Mildred had already left with polite kisses and promises to call soon. Now only family remained, surrounded by the debris of Christmas evening. Empty wine glasses, crumpled napkins, the lingering scent of roast and disappointment. "Well, that went nicely," I offered, gathering dessert plates from the dining room table. Yes, the guests seemed satisfied. Evelyn's voice carried no warmth, just the mechanical politeness of someone checking items off a social obligation list. She moved efficiently between kitchen and dining room, collecting serving dishes with the same casual indifference she'd shown my gift. The necklace still lay on the coffee table where she'd abandoned it hours ago. Every time I passed through the living room, the pearls caught Christmas tree lights like tiny accusations. $2,800 gleaming among wadded wrapping paper and empty wine glasses. Granville focused on practical tasks, loading the dishwasher, wiping counters, taking out trash bags filled with holiday waste. "I'll get these to the curb for tomorrow's pickup," he announced, grateful for any excuse to escape the tension crackling between his wife and father-in-law. Steam rose from the sink as I scrubbed plates with unnecessary intensity, my hands moving automatically while my mind replayed Evelyn's performance. "Dad always knows where to find nice costume jewelry at the supermarket." The words echoed in my skull like a recording stuck on repeat. Ivory appeared in his pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Grandpa, can I wear the pretty necklace tomorrow? It sparkles like princess jewelry." "It's just costume jewelry, sweetie," Evelyn replied, without looking up from the table she was wiping. "Nothing special." The dishwater suddenly felt scalding against my hands. Nothing special. Nearly $3,000 reduced to nothing special. "Be careful with it," I managed quietly. Came Evelyn's non-committal response, her attention already elsewhere. The house fell into uncomfortable silence, broken only by domestic sounds, dishes clinking, chairs being pushed under tables, the distant hum of the dishwasher beginning its cycle. Normal post-dinner cleanup noises that couldn't mask the emotional chasm widening between us. I finished the last wine glass, setting it carefully in the drying rack. Through the kitchen window, I could see neighbors' Christmas lights twinkling in the darkness, their displays probably purchased with credit cards and casual confidence. Not with 5 years of careful sacrifice, not with money meant for emergencies. Granville returned from his trash duty, brushing cold air off his jacket. "Temperature's dropping out there. Feels like snow coming?" "Good," Evelyn said, folding dish towels with sharp, efficient movements. "Ivory would like that?" She walked past the living room coffee table again, stepping around the jewelry box without a glance. My gift had become invisible to her, furniture she navigated around but never truly saw. "I think I'll head up," she announced, already moving toward the stairs. "Long day tomorrow with the after-Christmas sales." Granville followed her lead, mumbling goodnights and switching off lights as he went. Their footsteps creaked overhead, followed by the sounds of running water and closing doors. I remained in the kitchen, drying my hands slowly on a dish towel that smelled like Margaret's old detergent. The same towel, the same sink, the same evening routine I'd performed for decades. But something fundamental had shifted in the familiar ritual. Through the doorway, the necklace continued its silent vigil on the coffee table, catching occasional glints from the dying Christmas tree lights. Beautiful, expensive, and completely forgotten by the woman I'd sacrificed everything to please. The house settled around me with small creaks and sighs, the sounds of a home full of sleeping people who had no idea that something precious lay abandoned in their living room, something that represented more than they could possibly understand. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in darkness, listening to the silence that had replaced what should have been gratitude. Saturday morning bit through my old winter coat like a familiar enemy. 22 degrees according to the kitchen thermometer, cold enough to make my breath steam in the gray dawn light. Trash day had arrived with its usual reliability, indifferent to holidays or heartbreak. I pulled the wheeled garbage cans across frost-brittle grass toward the curb, their plastic wheels chattering against the uneven ground. 3 days had passed since Christmas. 3 days of watching that necklace sit forgotten on the coffee table until yesterday evening, when it simply vanished. I'd assumed Evelyn finally put it away somewhere safe. The Hendersons were already at their curb, bundled figures arranging recycling bins with weekend efficiency. Mrs. Patterson waved from her front window, coffee mug in hand, maintaining her vigil over neighborhood routines. As I positioned the first can beside the mailbox, something caught my eye through the black plastic bag's translucent surface. A glint of metal, maybe glass, nestled among coffee grounds and leftover mashed potatoes. Curious, I loosened the bag's tie and peered inside. My heart stopped. There, tangled with Christmas dinner scraps and wadded paper towels, lay my $2,800 necklace. Pearls coated with gravy residue, diamonds dulled by potato starch. The elegant clasp I'd watched James Hartwell demonstrate now, sticky with holiday waste. She hadn't put it away safely. She'd thrown it in the garbage like leftover turkey. My hands shook as I carefully extracted the necklace, trying not to damage the delicate stringing while removing bits of food debris. The pearls still glowed beneath their coating of kitchen waste, each one a perfect sphere that had taken years to form in Japanese waters. The diamonds caught morning sunlight, despite their film of grease, tiny prisms that had survived millennia underground, only to end up in my trash can. $2,800, nearly every penny I'd saved over 5 years, thrown away like it was worthless. The garbage truck rumbled in the distance, beginning its methodical journey through our neighborhood. Soon it would turn onto our street, and this beautiful, expensive symbol of my love would be crushed with banana peels and coffee filters, hauled away to a landfill where it would spend eternity buried under other people's discarded dreams. I stood in the cold morning air, holding a necklace worth more than most people's monthly salary, picking food scraps off pearls that had cost me everything. My breath came in sharp puffs that dissipated quickly in the freezing air, like the hopes I'd harbored for Christmas morning. So, this was how she truly felt about my love. Not just indifferent, actively dismissive. The necklace wasn't worth keeping in a drawer or jewelry box. It wasn't even worth the small effort of returning to me with polite thanks. It was literal garbage to her, waste to be collected and hauled away with potato peelings and used napkins. The sound of the garbage truck grew closer, maybe 2 streets away. I pulled tissues from my coat pocket and gently cleaned each pearl, each diamond, restoring their shine one careful swipe at a time. The necklace's beauty emerged from beneath the debris like truth surfacing through lies. This wasn't costume jewelry. This wasn't supermarket trinkets. This was genuine, valuable, beautiful. Everything Evelyn had dismissed it as not being. And she'd thrown it away without a second thought, without even bothering to look closely enough to recognize its quality. As I lifted the clean necklace to the morning light, watching it catch the sun like captured starlight, I understood something fundamental had changed between my daughter and me. This wasn't just about Christmas gifts or family traditions or even money. This was about respect, about recognition, about the value of sacrifice, and it was about teaching someone a lesson they'd never forget. The garbage truck turned onto our street, its hydraulic whine echoing between houses. I slipped the necklace into my coat pocket and wheeled the empty garbage can back toward the house, leaving the truck to collect nothing but ordinary waste. Some treasures were worth saving, some lessons were worth teaching, and some daughters needed to learn exactly what they'd thrown away. The morning sun had climbed higher by the time I settled into Margaret's rocking chair with my coffee and the evidence. 2.5 hours had passed since the garbage discovery, time spent carefully cleaning the necklace, returning it to its silk-lined box, and retrieving the receipt from my dresser drawer where I'd tucked it for safekeeping. Now, I had everything spread on the small side table, the jewelry box with its precious contents, the store receipt with its damning price, and my old calculator ready for the mathematics of justice. The receipt told the whole story in black and white. Hartwell Jewelers, pearl and diamond necklace, December 20th, 2024. $247.99 cash payment. Every detail documented with the precision of a legal document, which perhaps it would become. I picked up the calculator and began tallying the real cost of Evelyn's ingratitude. Monthly groceries I provided, $400 minimum. Utilities for the entire house, $200 monthly. Annual property taxes that kept the roof over their heads, $3,000 yearly. Last year's emergency medical bills when Ivory needed stitches, $800. Over 3 years of supporting her family, the total approached $25,000. $25,000 in rent-free housing, covered expenses, and quiet generosity that she'd come to expect as her due rather than recognize as sacrifice. And now she'd thrown away nearly $3,000 more without a moment's consideration. But here was the delicious irony. She didn't know what she'd thrown away. In her mind, she'd discarded worthless costume jewelry, cheap trinkets that deserved no better fate than the garbage can. She had no idea she'd tossed nearly $3,000 of genuine pearls and diamonds like they were plastic beads from a dollar store. The plan began forming with crystalline clarity, as precise as the cut of the diamonds she'd dismissed. Evelyn thought she was so sophisticated, so worldly compared to her old-fashioned father. She mocked my supermarket jewelry to her friends, performed gratitude while delivering humiliation. But her sophistication was all surface. She couldn't recognize quality when it lay in her hands. What would happen if she discovered the truth? Not gradually, not through gentle revelation, but suddenly, unmistakably, in a way that would make her realize exactly what she'd done. I rocked slowly, watching the house where my ungrateful daughter slept late on Saturday morning, probably dreaming of after-Christmas sales and credit card purchases. She measured everything by price tags, but couldn't identify value when it stared her in the face. Margaret used to say that some lessons could only be learned through consequences, that wisdom sometimes required uncomfortable truths. She'd taught Evelyn to face the results of her choices, whether it was forgotten homework or broken promises. But Margaret had died before our daughter's character hardened into its current shape, before gratitude became performance and love became transaction. Perhaps it was time for one final lesson. A teaching moment that would show Evelyn exactly what disrespect cost, what casual cruelty looked like when reflected back at her. What happened when someone assumed their father was too stupid to know the difference between real and fake. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my shirt pocket, right over my heart where Margaret's ring rested on its chain. The necklace went back into its elegant box, evidence preserved for the right moment. Standing slowly, joints protesting the winter cold, I looked toward the house where my family lived in the comfort I provided. The plan was still forming, details emerging like pearls strung one by one onto silk thread. But the direction was clear now. No more passive acceptance. No more turning the other cheek. No more letting disrespect masquerade as modern sophistication. Evelyn wanted to play games about value and worth. She wanted to humiliate her father in front of friends while living off his generosity? Fine. Let the games begin. But this time, I'd be the one holding all the cards, and the receipt that would teach her the most expensive lesson of her adult life. Sunday morning light filtered through my bedroom windows, casting long rectangles across the hardwood floor. I sat on the edge of my bed, reading glasses perched on my nose, studying the receipt that would change everything. 24 hours had passed since I'd found that necklace in the garbage, and my plan had crystallized with the precision of fine clockwork. The receipt told its story in black ink on white paper. Hartwell Jewelers, pearl and diamond necklace, handcrafted, December 20th, 2024. $2,047.99, cash. Every detail perfectly preserved, waiting for its moment of revelation. I'd spent yesterday evening observing Evelyn's routines with the patience of a naturalist studying wildlife. She was a creature of habit, predictable as sunrise. Every morning at 9:45, she descended the stairs in her terry cloth robe. At 10 o'clock sharp, she made coffee and checked the kitchen counter for mail, messages, anything that required her attention. Always alone during this time, Granville long gone to his sales calls, Ivory at school. Perfect. My small notebook contained the observations. 10 a.m., coffee routine, counter check, usually 15 minutes alone. The timing would be crucial. Too early, and she might miss it. Too late, and the opportunity would pass. But at exactly 10 o'clock, when she stood waiting for the coffee to brew, scanning the counter with sleepy morning eyes, that's when she'd find what I'd left for her. The receipt needed to look accidentally dropped, not deliberately placed. I folded it carefully, making sure the price remained visible, but naturally so. The store name would catch her attention first. Hartwell Jewelers wasn't some discount chain. Then her eyes would find the item description, and finally that devastating number. $2,147.99. I wondered how long it would take for comprehension to dawn. How many seconds between reading the words and understanding their meaning? How quickly would casual indifference transform into panicked desperation? The bedroom clock showed 8:30. Plenty of time to position myself downstairs, to be ready when her world shifted on its axis. I slipped the receipt into my shirt pocket, right over my heart where Margaret's ring rested on its chain. 2 pieces of evidence, one of love lost, one of love discarded. Standing slowly, joints protesting the morning cold, I moved to my dresser where the jewelry box sat hidden behind old sweaters. Inside, the necklace lay clean and beautiful, every pearl lustrous, every diamond sparkling like captured starlight. She'd thrown this away like garbage, but it remained valuable, precious, worthy of respect. Unlike its former owner's gratitude, the house stirred with morning sounds, creaking floorboards, the whisper of someone moving upstairs, the distant hum of the heating system cycling on. Soon Evelyn would begin her descent, unaware that this Sunday morning would teach her the most expensive lesson of her adult life. I checked the clock again. 8:45, time to take my position. The receipt felt warm against my chest as I headed for the stairs, my footsteps silent on the familiar treads. 15 years of living in this house had taught me which boards creaked, which stairs whispered secrets. I moved like a ghost through my own home, preparing to haunt my daughter's conscience. In the kitchen, I surveyed the counter space near the coffee maker. The receipt would go there, beside the sugar bowl, where morning light from the east window would make every printed letter crystal clear, close enough to the coffee station that she couldn't miss it, casual enough to seem accidentally dropped. The clock on the microwave glowed green. 8:55 a.m. 5 minutes until execution. I positioned myself in the living room doorway where I could observe the kitchen without being seen. Margaret's old rocking chair sat nearby. She'd loved watching morning sunlight paint patterns across the walls. Today that light would illuminate something far more significant than dust motes and coffee steam. Footsteps creaked overhead, right on schedule. The receipt crinkled softly as I removed it from my pocket, unfolding it to reveal its secrets. In 10 minutes, maybe 15, Evelyn would hold this same piece of paper. Her casual dismissal would transform into desperate panic. Her confident superiority would crumble into horrified realization. And then she'd come looking for her father, ready to explain how she'd accidentally thrown away nearly $3,000. But I'd be ready with the truth. The kitchen remained silent as I slipped the receipt beside the coffee maker at exactly 9:55 a.m. Morning sunlight caught the white paper, making the black ink stand out like a billboard advertisement. Perfect placement, impossible to miss, natural enough to seem accidental. I retreated to my observation post in the living room doorway, newspaper folded in my hands as camouflage. The house held its breath around me, waiting for the performance to begin. Right on schedule, footsteps creaked on the stairs. Evelyn appeared in her familiar terry cloth robe, hair tousled from sleep, moving with the automatic efficiency of someone following a routine older than memory. She padded directly to the coffee station, her slippers wisering against linoleum. The coffee maker gurgled to life under her touch. Steam began rising from the brewing chamber, while she turned her attention to the counter, scanning for anything that required her attention. Mail, messages, reminders, the detritus of domestic life that accumulated like snow. Her eyes found the receipt. She picked it up casually, probably expecting a grocery store slip or utility bill. The paper rustled between her fingers as she held it closer to catch the morning light. "Hartwell Jewelers," she read aloud, voice still thick with sleep. I watched her blink, focusing more intently on the unfamiliar letterhead. Her free hand reached for the counter, steadying herself as consciousness sharpened. Pearl and diamond necklace. The words came slower now, confusion creeping into her tone. Handcrafted. She held the receipt closer to her face, squinting at the details like someone trying to solve a puzzle. The coffee maker continued its cheerful bubbling, indifferent to the drama unfolding beside it. Then her eyes found the price. $2,147 . The receipt trembled between her fingers. Color drained from her face like water from a punctured balloon. She gripped the counter edge, knuckles white against the laminate surface. "Oh my goodness!" The words exploded from her lips. "What have I done?" She stared at the paper as if it might change, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. But mathematics remained merciless. The price held steady, undeniable proof of value she'd dismissed as worthless. "This can't be real." Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking quietly might make the truth less true. "Dad wouldn't spend this much. He's always so careful with money." But the receipt contradicted her assumptions with corporate precision. Store name, item description, price, date, payment method. Every detail documented with the authority of commercial transaction. The coffee maker gave its final gurgle, signaling completion, but Evelyn ignored it entirely. She clutched the receipt like a lifeline, or perhaps a death sentence, her morning routine forgotten in the face of financial catastrophe. "The trash!" Panic sharpened her voice. "When do they pick up trash?" She spun toward the back door, probably calculating whether the garbage truck had already made its rounds. Saturday pickup, Sunday morning discovery, the timing couldn't be worse, or better, depending on perspective. Saturday was trash day, she whispered, the words carrying the weight of realization. "It's already gone. Everything's gone." The receipt fluttered in her trembling hands as the full magnitude hit her. Nearly $3,000, thrown away with coffee grounds and leftover mashed potatoes. $3,000 her supposedly cheap, old-fashioned father had somehow spent on a gift she'd dismissed as supermarket trinkets. She looked toward the living room, toward where she knew I spent my mornings. Her face had gone completely pale, eyes wide with the kind of panic reserved for life-changing mistakes. The confident woman who'd performed gratitude while delivering public humiliation had vanished, replaced by someone who just discovered the true cost of casual cruelty. The coffee continued dripping into its pot, filling the kitchen with rich aroma that competed with the scent of gathering catastrophe. Steam rose from the machine like incense at an altar of regret. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," she whispered, clutching the receipt against her chest as if she could absorb its contents back into reality, undo what couldn't be undone. She took a tentative step toward the living room, then stopped. What could she say? How could she explain throwing away a gift worth more than most people's monthly salary? How could she justify the casual contempt she'd shown for her father's sacrifice? The receipt crinkled as she smoothed it with shaking fingers, reading the details again, as if repetition might change their meaning. But paper remained paper, ink remained ink, and truth remained devastating. Her knees wobbled slightly as the full realization settled. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything, about assumptions and dismissals, about public humiliation and private contempt, about the real value of things she'd casually destroyed. She gathered her courage and took another step toward the living room, where her father waited with a newspaper and 35 years of patience finally reaching its limit. I lowered my newspaper as Evelyn burst through the living room doorway, the receipt clutched against her chest like a shield. Her face had gone completely white, except for 2 bright spots of panic coloring her cheeks. The confident woman who dismissed my gift 3 days ago had vanished entirely. "Dad!" The word exploded from her lips. "I found this receipt. This necklace costs almost $3,000. I folded the newspaper carefully, set it aside, and looked at her with the calm of someone who'd been expecting exactly this conversation. "I know. I accidentally threw it away." Her voice climbed toward hysteria. "Quick, we need to check the trash before pickup. Maybe we can—" "There was nothing accidental about it, Evelyn." My voice remained steady, matter of fact. "I saw you throw away my gift." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, the receipt crumpling slightly in her grip. "Dad, I didn't know. I thought it was just costume jewelry. I thought—" You thought it was cheap supermarket trinkets. I stood slowly, my joints protesting, but my resolve unwavering. That's exactly what you told the Grahams and Mildred. Dad always knows where to find nice costume jewelry at the supermarket. Those were your precise words. Color flooded back into her face, but now it was shame rather than panic. I didn't want them to think. You didn't want them to think your father was capable of generosity? You didn't want them to know I'd spent real money on you? I walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where our drama played out invisible to watching eyes. Or did you simply enjoy humiliating me in public? Dad, please, I made a mistake. I didn't understand. I turned to face her fully, and something in my expression must have warned her that apologies would no longer suffice. Let me help you understand, Evelyn. For 3 years, I've provided your family with free housing in a property worth over $200,000. I pay the utilities, roughly $200 monthly. I cover the property taxes, $3,000 annually. I buy groceries when your husband's sales are slow. I paid $800 for Ivory's emergency room visit last year. She opened her mouth to speak, but I continued relentlessly. Conservative estimate, $25,000 in support over 3 years. And you repaid this generosity by publicly humiliating me while literally throwing my love in the garbage. Dad, I'm sorry. I'll be more grateful, I promise. No. The word cut through her desperate promises like a blade. You won't have the opportunity. Something in my tone finally penetrated her panic. She stopped pleading and stared at me with growing comprehension. You have 3 days to find alternative housing arrangements for yourself and Granville. I kept my voice calm, businesslike. I will no longer provide financial support for either of you. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I returned to my chair, picking up the newspaper as if this were a routine conversation. Ivory will always have a place in this house. He's innocent in this. But you and your husband do not. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have money for rent deposits, for moving expenses. Perhaps you should have considered that before throwing away $3,000 of genuine pearls and diamonds. I opened the newspaper, scanning headlines with theatrical calm. I'm sure your sophisticated friends will help, the ones who judge families by their Christmas displays. She stood there clutching the receipt, finally understanding that her father's patience had limits, that generosity required appreciation, that actions carried consequences she'd never bothered to consider. Dad, please. The decision is final, Evelyn. I didn't look up from the sports section. You wanted to be independent of your old-fashioned father's values. Now you'll have that opportunity. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the rustle of newspaper pages and the distant sound of children playing in yards where families still respected each other. Outside the window, Christmas decorations still adorned houses where gratitude hadn't died of neglect. She remained frozen in my living room, holding proof of her mistake, finally understanding that some lessons came with price tags that couldn't be ignored or discarded. The receipt trembled in her hands, not from panic now, but from the weight of consequences she had earned through casual cruelty. 3 days. Enough time to pack, to call friends, to discover which relationships survive financial inconvenience. Enough time to learn what independence actually cost when subsidies ended and reality began. I turned to the weather forecast, noting that snow was predicted for the weekend. The house would be quieter after they left, more peaceful. Margaret's ornaments would hang undisturbed, and Christmas would mean tradition rather than transaction. The receipt fluttered to the floor as Evelyn's hands went limp. $3,000 lay scattered in paper form at her feet, proof of value she'd never learned to recognize until it was too late. Justice had a price. Today, she was finally learning to pay it. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.